Hello and welcome to the Hard Seltzers application. This is an iOS application that I created for people who are passionate about hard seltzers. I will be walking you through the app and some of its functionality, followed by an explanation of the code that allows the functionality to take place. So let's begin. This is what you see when you first open the app. You see that there are three tabs: a Home tab, a Seltzer List tab, and a Seltzer Map tab. The Home tab provides an introduction to the app, as well as provides some seltzer fun facts, and includes this button at the bottom which says "Tap if you love seltzers." When you tap on this button, the button rotates and the color of the screen changes to the color pink, which is the theme color of this application. So that's essentially the Home tab. Then you move to the second tab, which is the Seltzer List tab, which displays a list of seltzers. Here we can see all the different seltzers we have with their name and a short description. We can tap on a specific seltzer to see more about the specific seltzer. Here we see its name, its description, as well as whether it's been tasted before. And we also see we have two buttons here. The shop button, once clicked on, opens up the actual website of that specific seltzer and allows you to purchase it if you want to. We're not going to actually go onto their website, but that's essentially what that button does. And then we have the second button, which is the share seltzer. And what that does is once clicked, it allows you to actually share some information about the seltzer. In this case, as you can see, we're able to share the White Claw website. So that's the detail screen. And on this list screen, we see that we're actually able to favorite seltzers. So we can favorite White Claw, we can favorite High Noon, Topo Chico, and Fizzy. And once these seltzers have been marked as our favorites, we can click on the favorites button up here. And here we can see a collection of our favorite seltzers. We can go back, we can unmark White Claw and High Noon as not being our favorites. And here you can see that the favorites collection has been updated. So that's essentially the Seltzer List tab. And our final tab of the application is our Seltzer Map. This map displays a list of seltzers from around the world that are popular or unique. For example, we can click on Truly here, which is a sweet, trendy seltzer from Ohio. Moving over to Europe, we have OJ Hard Seltzer, which is a seltzer born in Belgium. And in Asia, we have Zaya, for example, which is China's first seltzer brand. So that's essentially the functionality of this application. And now I'm going to walk you through some of the code. So let's start with the Home Table View controller. The Home Table View controller controls the home screen of our application. The home screen of our application is actually a static table view, so it doesn't actually do all that much. But the one piece of functionality that we did see was our rotating button, which is achieved through UI view.animate that rotates our button by a particular CG float. And it has a completion block that changes the image once the animation is done. So that's the home screen. Let's move on to the main screen of our application, which is our seltzer list, which displays a list of seltzers. The seltzer list, which is controlled by Seltzer List View Controller, is essentially a view controller with a table view, and it has an array of seltzers, as you can see here. Our actual seltzers are obtained through this seltzer service, which essentially is a networking call that is made to our API, as you can see here, and which then decodes the JSON we receive, and we obtain our seltzer objects. So once we have our seltzer objects and they've been placed inside the seltzer's class variable, we then implement our table view delegate methods, which essentially defines the number of rows in our table, being the number of seltzers in our array. And for each row in the table, we dequeue a cell, and we mark that cell as having the seltzer associated with the seltzers array at a particular index. And this is essentially a custom cell that we've defined here as Seltzer cell. And we're able to add the Seltzer's name as well as its description through this method. If we scroll down here, we can see that we've attached a UI contextual action to each cell, which allows you to mark each of the cells as a favorite. In this case, the action is once the cell is actually tapped as being a favorite, the seltzer associated with that cell is confirmed as being tasted before, and we can see that an accessory image view of a wine glass is attached to that cell. So that's essentially how a cell is marked as a favorite. So speaking of favorites, let's move on to the favorites collection view controller, which displays our favorite seltzers. But before the favorite seltzer collection view controller is actually pulled up, we actually want to pass it a list of our favorite seltzers. So in this prepare for segue function, we create a temporary array called favorite seltzers, and only if a seltzer has been confirmed as being tasted before, i.e. our favorite, then it's appended to this array, and then we actually pass this array to the favorites collection view controller. So let's now move to the favorites collection view controller. The favorites collection view controller acts very similarly in terms of the implemented functions as a table view. We have an array of seltzers, and we have the delegate methods for the collection view, with the number of items in the collection view being the number of seltzers in our array. And again, we're dequeuing a cell for each of the items in our collection. Again, we have a custom cell that we defined here, and for each cell we mark its seltzer as being the seltzer associated with the seltzer array at a particular index path. So that's the favorites collection view controller. And now let's move on to the detail view controller, which is the detail screen that's pulled up when we tap on a seltzer in our list. This is a view controller that essentially loads a lot of data. So we have all our IP outlets linked up, a name label, a description label, tasted before label, seltzer image view, as well as a seltzer that's been passed to the detail view controller. And here in the view did load function, we're essentially loading all of those data into those IP outlets. And when we come down here, we can actually see some of the functionality for the two buttons we saw. So for our web view button, which pulls up the website of the seltzer, again, when we're preparing for a segue associated with clicking with that button, we pass a particular URL based on the seltzer that we're currently on. And the web view controller is essentially a very simple controller with a web view that takes a particular URL and loads it. Going back to the detail view controller, the second button is the share seltzer button, which essentially pops up a UI activity view controller that allows you to share items. In this case, the items that we're sharing is a seltzer name, a seltzer image, and a seltzer URL, with the logic being over here. So that's our detail view controller. And now we move on to our final view controller, also our final tab of the application, which was our map view. So we can go to the seltzer map view controller over here. And in this view controller, which controls the map tab, we see that we've linked up a seltzer map. And we've also created this struct here at the bottom, which is a seltzer example that has a name, latitude, longitude, and a description. This essentially allows us to create the points on the map. And here we can see that we've created a lot of sample data. To work with a map, we first have to create a bunch of points. So as you can see here, we're creating an MK point annotation. And then for that point, we're setting a title, a subtitle, and a coordinate, which essentially allows the points to appear on the map. We then implement a number of delegate functions associated with a map view. In this case, here we're returning a view for each annotation, which essentially is the pin image that we saw that was associated with each of the points. And we also allow for clustering of different points, which essentially means that if a lot of points are close together, they will coalesce together into a single point on the map. So that's essentially how the map view controller works and how it allows us to pull up a map of Seltzers. So that was a quick overview of some of the code that allows our application to implement all of its functionality. As we can see, the application does a lot of cool things in the world of iOS development. It uses a table view, a collection view, a map view controller. It does some animations, as well as does some cool things in terms of sharing and web views as well. So it covers a lot of ground and is definitely a great application to play around with and go into. All of the code will be linked in the video description below. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you very much.